Welcome. Today, I have a very special guest. I have Donald Wittman, Professor Emeritus at UC Santa Cruz. Donald is one of the most important intellectual influences on me. Reading this book, The Myth of Democratic Failure, when I was a PhD student, just blew my mind. I had received all of this education in public choice theory, and Don's book just said, yes, this is a gross misreading of the theory, gross misreading of the evidence. And what he said in this book is that unless you're willing to go and make the kind of assumptions economists don't like to make, assumptions like the whole world's a monopoly, transactions costs are ridiculously high, or people are morons, unless you're willing to make assumptions like that, then democracy should actually be working quite well as one could reasonably expect a system where we've got to live under some common system, live under a common system. The best way that I like to, or the way I like to explain the book is that there are so many dissenters who look at democracy and say something's wrong. And my interpretation of Don, you can correct me if you want, is that this is basically like someone who goes into a grocery store and says, "Where's the pickle flavored ice cream?" Everybody knows it's the best flavor, but it's not here. Market failure. And I think that the normal reaction would be, maybe the problem is just that you have a very unusual preference. You think the whole world should revolve around you, and that is not a reasonable standard to hold any social system to. And similarly, if you are any kind of dissenter in democracy, for someone who's a libertarian or a socialist or adhere to any other unusual view, the problem, if this book is right, is really just that you think the whole world should revolve around you, and you have rationalized your eccentricity into a theory of the universe in a way that you should not. So anyway, that's my quick intro to Don. Don, have I said anything wrong?
No, you said it better than I could,
Oh,
which is
Don.
typical.
Yes. I mean, I've got to say that in one of our exchanges, you led with probably my favorite line that any critic of mine has ever had, which is, you usually in exchange like this, you start explaining that your opponent hasn't understood you. And then you said, "I'm not going to say that because Bryan's explained my position better than I explained it myself." And I'm like, well, and all critics of my reading comprehension take note. Whatever else I have wrong with me, I'm good at reading other people and knowing what they're trying to say. Okay, so we're basically on the same page in terms of your points and your general outlook. The reason why I called you here is almost every human being that I know thinks that, especially the last 10 years of democracy, have been crazy. They are just stunned, baffled, just flabbergasted. And then you might even stretch it back further. So I think there's a lot of people who think the whole last 25 years or so have been a travesty. You published this book, I believe, in 1995, based on an article from 1989. With the benefit of hindsight, Don, I can kind of feel like people who love democracy were in a triumphalist age. The Soviet Union, whole Soviet bloc collapsed. We've got the whole world talking about free market capitalism and democracy. It seemed like it was an era when, if ever it were possible to believe that this is a really functional system, it was possible then. Is so bottom line, so is like, is any of the major events that have happened since then, especially in the US, given you pause?
Well, that's a good question. I was hoping to put that off to the end, but
Well,
I
let's
will
do it now, and then we can come
we'll
back.
go back
Yeah,
in
let's front load
reverse.
it.
So yes, it has been very challenging to maintain
Could you just
very
tell me what's
positive
the first
outlook.
year? What's the first year when you just felt like something was awry?
When so you want me to actually say, well, it
Yeah,
had a lot to do with Trump.
like if it's not too much to ask, like what's the
Yeah,
year
I don't
when you
mind.
just
I
started
don't
saying,
mind admitting it. It has a lot to do with what Trump has done.
so like 2015? So, all right, 2015. So, did you believe Trump could get the Republican nomination in 2015?
It's a predictor.
Yeah, I mean, well, given your model, I would think that you would see this clown and say, well, the system is designed to prevent people like him from actually winning.
The problem is that I don't have my finger on the pulse of people. I don't follow
Well,
the a lot of surveys, and I'm certainly in a bubble. So I
But
don't
but but this
really,
but this book, does it not give us
I
guidance
was
about what is
responding
possible for
to,
people to be thinking? Like they're not
yeah,
going to be
so I
thinking
should have
something
expected.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's been challenging, I have to admit. But
So in
I
2015, you sounds like you were quite surprised that he was able to get the nomination. I mean, I guess it was 2016, but
no, I
he
wasn't
was
paying
doing
that
well
much
in 2015,
attention.
right? He was already doing well in 2015 in the primaries.
Yeah, I don't think that as I said, I don't feel that I have a pulse on the people, and so
Mhm.
I didn't have as clear expectations of what it would be.
Did you have a reaction of this kind of a lunatic is precisely the sort that our efficient democratic institutions will keep out of power?
As I said, certainly it has been challenging to hold
Right,
on
right,
to
right.
my
But let's
present
unpack the
views.
challenge. Look,
You got me.
yes. Well, but do let's unpack the challenge. So it came as a bit of surprise, and then obviously it's not till 2016 this guy wins. All right, and then the next step is all right. So the primary process has failed, but obviously the general election will take care of it. I think that's what most economists thought, because you would nominate someone who is so far from the media in so many ways, then he's not going to win, right?
Yes.
Was that your thought?
I can't go back that far. I'm not exactly sure what I was thinking at that time. And I think I have to just always go back to the something I've said three times already, so I don't want to bore you with it, is that I have a view about markets in general.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a good detail
Mm-hmm.
about particular situations.
Mm-hmm. Sure, but I think we would both be similarly shocked if McDonald's just stopped serving hamburgers, right?
Yes.
or, or if they just said, from now on we have broccoli, not French fries. It'd be one where we have a good enough sense of what human beings are like and what that business is. And then if just the largest rest in the world just suddenly started doing the opposite of what we were expecting, there would
Yes.
be some soul searching. Like, could it be that I'm so out of touch, or is my model of the world wrong? And that's what I'm thinking you might have been thinking in 2016.
I think to put it in a slightly different way, I know that a lot of people were very upset about Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I
Franklin Roosevelt.
understand their
Yes.
think. I understand now how they felt,
Mm-hmm.
that they were shocked about all the things that he did, and they were extremely angry. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the what's happened in reverse. Now,
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think
I'm going to
there's
say
something
Roosevelt's
else. Is I
probably my
think
very least. Oh, sorry.
when one side goes a little bit too far off in one direction, like the Democrats maybe became too woke, although I don't like to use that term, that there was reaction. They overstepped the nature of what people thought they were getting, and maybe and then there's all the people get angry and they start, not all, a certain segment get
Mm-hmm.
angry, and people who ordinarily didn't vote started, I think, voted
Mm-hmm.
for Trump. In fact, again, you shouldn't really rely on me to have all this insight, because I don't really know about the details. Uh,
But does one need all the details if you have this book that guides our thinking? Look, honestly, Don, like the book is so logical
Yes.
that look. I know you had a lot of very unfair criticism. People saying, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about." Snake oil sales, and no, this is a very carefully crafted book, finely engineered. If it's got a flaw, you're going to have to look very closely. I mean, I would just take this book and say, like, I'm going to interpret if this were my book, so I'm interpreting everything through this lens of this book. And then it's like, how can I squint hard enough to make what happened make sense? And that's to me hard.
So I gave up and worked on other issues.
All right, that's a fair
I
answer.
mean, I think let me start off with the way the way I think, and then maybe we'll see if we can put it in. Now, this is slightly different words than you used, but I think it's correct. The median voter is the one that determines the outcome, not the average voter.
Mhm.
And there's generally a positive correlation between education and voting. In other
Mhm.
words, the more educated people are more likely to vote.
Mhm.
And and I think what happened, at least to some degree, is that people who didn't ordinarily vote voted in that election. Now, I'm not positive of that because I say I haven't been following the news, but I think people didn't like uh, what happened and actually in 2016 and also again in 2024 from
And so like that may well be true, although let me go and quote some of your book back to you. So you don't actually say the median voter will do what the median voter wants because that ignores the possibility of log rolling. So if the median voter can win and then go to the loser and say, well, I've now got the power to do some stuff you don't like, and you're going to have to go and basically bribe me to stop. So I would say, like, in fact, you say in your book that we're not going to go and do what the median voter wants. We're going to do the Calderix efficient thing of catering to the mean voter. And then what's going to happen as a result of these sorts of shifts is just a change in distribution of wealth rather than actually doing something that would be inefficient, right?
yes, sort of. I don't really, yeah, it's you. I've
Makes
had to
sense.
deal with this issue, right? Obviously, but I haven't dealt with it in probably a systematic way anymore because
No
it's
time, no time, no time like the present, buddy.
huh?
No
No
time
time
like the
like the
present, buddy.
president. I don't know if I can do much better. It was surprising, and I think we got a very unusual combination of things that happened, and I'm wondering what's going to happen in the future. In
Yeah.
other words, is this an abnormal outcome, and we're going to go back to normal, or is this something that's going to happen, continue to happen?
Yeah, that's a question that concerns many of us, I will say. So let's just go back to the wokeness that you said you don't like the term. So like basic Wittmanian logic says, for example, that if the total value to society in dollar terms of not having trans women in women's sports exceed is positive, then it won't happen because either the Democrats will win, they'll have the power to go and force sports to have transgender athletes, but then the majority will say, well, what do we have to give you guys for you to not go ahead and do that? Or alternately, the other side will win and then they'll do the efficient things. So either way, it would seem like it wouldn't really matter which side wins. And yet it sure looks to those of us on the surface and maybe even more than the surface like it actually matters which side wins. And there's a strange, they're not strange, but this there's the same discontinuity that a very naive Democratic theorist, someone who had never read you, and it seems like they're getting the prediction right, and you're not. What do you say about that?
Well, I don't emphasize the log rolling as much as the median voter, so I understand. But I mean,
Well, I mean,
there are
yes.
certain
Okay, keep
aspects.
talking while I go through the table of contents.
Well, you know my book better
Yes.
than I do. I haven't
Yeah.
looked at it since
Chapter
then.
4,
Yeah.
transactions cost and the design of democratic institutions. Look, you're not a simple-minded median voter guy. You're a sophisticated Whitmanian.
Well,
And
I
therefore,
think that the median voter usually encompasses all that, so I think it's a little bit different. But I may be
no, I
wrong.
mean, but like,
I may.
yeah.
You you've read my book and you paid more attention. I sort of think that the median voter essentially encompasses most of those ideas. That's why they're at the median.
Well, I mean, I guess the way that I would explain your position to others is the median voter gets things roughly right, but then for any remaining issues where there's an intense minority that wants something, and the majority doesn't care very much, that's where there's going to be a bargain.
Yeah,
Or
but I think in
yes,
this case, the majority did
yes.
care a lot about
Um,
the particular issue that you
mhm.
bring up seems to me, and this is I as
What
an
transgender
individual,
athletes?
huh?
Transgender athletes.
trans athletes.
Okay. I mean, but isn't this almost the definition of a very tiny niche issue that hardly anybody has a dog in this fight?
Well, some people have strong views about it.
Yeah.
That's what's the
I mean,
interesting thing.
right. I mean, since you're saying you're not following public opinion that closely, so I do actually. So what's striking to me is like wokeness, like in 2024, I don't think it makes most lists of top 5 issues for voters. It really looks much more like inflation was the main
That's
issue.
right. Inflation was a very
Yes.
bad. I agree. Inflation was bad, and almost any economist except one.
Are,
uh,
are his initials PK?
huh?
Are his initials PK?
Yes. I don't understand why he. I that was must have been the stupidest thing. I couldn't believe it. So it was very hard for me to understand Paul at all at that time. I thought he was ridiculous. And
Well,
of
remember,
course, he
Paul
was
does have this saying
ridiculous.
that for any given issue, either me or Larry Summers is right. The problem is nobody knows which who's going to be right on any particular issue. That's I. It's one of the most rhetorically powerful, self-aggrandizing admissions of error.
Yes, that's true. So, I mean, I remember I couldn't believe it. It seemed so obvious to any economist that you wouldn't try to inflate.
And
You
Jerome Powell seemed to also be surprised. So, I mean, as to whether he was genuinely surprised or whether he was just going with the flow and trying to get along with others, hard to say.
So in that case, that was a disaster,
Mm-hmm.
and it was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
A
Right.
lot of the Inflation Reduction Act was to increase inflation. I couldn't
Right.
believe
But
it's really
then,
hard
yeah,
to accept.
yeah. Like, I mean, I don't want to be a broken record here, Don, but it seems like in your model, for a screw up on inflation to then lead to a bunch of other downstream effects, it's like, well, inflation was too high, so now we're getting rid of trans athletes in women's sports. Be like, no, shouldn't there be at least a renegotiation where the losing side that cares more says, okay, well, we'll offer you something, or could be vice versa. It could be that it's the winning side that cares more in dollar terms, summed, and therefore the losing side wouldn't get what they wanted, but then they wouldn't have been doing it before either.
I think it's a problem that they got it wrong, and then they got somebody else who's doing it wrong in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
like getting rid of like having high tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
So so all I'm getting is one side doing crazy things versus another side doing
Mm-hmm.
crazy things, and I think I'm trying to figure your arguments generally against me seem a little bit better than before because they're both nuts.
Yeah. I mean, so let's think about another issue where you made a very strong case and you said it's not just about individual politicians, it's about the parties. Parties are
Yes,
like firms, they're organizations, they're long lasting, they care about their reputations. It seems like, again, this is a case where both parties gatekeeping really fell through. So with Biden, it's like, let's go and put a guy with dementia in charge. With Trump, actually, the gatekeeping seemed like it might work back in 2016 when there was alliance of all of his enemies, but then he just burst through and won in any case. There's all there. It was this idea in the first term that, well, there's all these forces that are controlling him. Second term, it seems like a lot less. There's this slogan of taco. You know, taco.
oh, you mean that he talks one way
No, no,
and
no. Taco says Trump always chickens out.
yes.
So that's some notion of, I guess, the Republican Party or the general system somehow stops him from doing the craziest stuff. But I think you need to move the goalposts of the craziest stuff in order to feel much consolation in this slogan. What do you think?
I think it's true. It's true that people thought that Trump, but it would sort of be constrained, and I think people didn't realize that they or the party leaders in the Democratic Party didn't. Why didn't anybody seriously run against Biden? I have no.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating to me. If Trump was such an awful person, wouldn't you
Mm-hmm.
do everything to prevent him?
Yeah.
And I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. They
I mean,
all stayed back and now are running.
Now, look. If I were you, Don, I would say actually the Democratic strategy, though it failed in hindsight, it made perfect sense. Namely, that it is when you're facing a very powerful enemy, you don't want to go and create internal conflict. And I think that that would be at least a plausible answer. It's like, look, even if he's not the best candidate, there may be so much dead weight loss from fighting among ourselves that it's actually going to be
Yeah, I
worse
didn't
if we
believe
just
that. I just thought here's a guy who's even before people decided he was an idiot. I mean, doddering fool. Uh,
let's be precise here.
he was old. Why would anybody? Why
Yeah.
would you want to put a very old guy running for president? It just seems so. It didn't need a lot of sort of sophisticated thinking.
Yeah.
So I can't
As we've
explain
seen,
that.
it's actually two morbidly old guys, and even
That's
stranger
true.
breakdown of the system. Look, if I were going to go and try to rationalize everything in Whitmanian terms, I would say, all right, look, you young people naively think that you know best and that there is not any great advantage of the accumulated crystallized intelligence, but trust me, there is. And actually, old people, they just know more and they got better connections. And they may not be that quick on their feet and they may have trouble using the latest website, but they are the best leaders, right? Don't, but that's not going to be, but you don't like that story.
No, I don't like that story. See, I didn't. You're hoping that I'm going to try to find a good explanation for all this, and my only explanation is that it doesn't always work.
Hmm. Okay. Like
This
so
is
like
let
how
me try
many
to.
like how long does the insanity have to go on before you will just say, look, I love this book, but
We'll
I'm
see the next election.
one more election. I mean, honestly, I'm such a pit bull of a debater that if I could get a full retraction just by having four more horrible years, on some level, it would feel like a good deal. I'm not saying that that is a sensible reaction.
I
Just
mean, I think people try to protect their arguments by going way too far off the trying to protect them. And in my case, I don't want to protect my arguments
all right.
except to say that it doesn't always come out perfectly. It's
Hmm,
the only, what I like to say, it's the only game in town. I don't have a better theory
hmm,
of elections. I'm not willing to accept other people's theories. In other words,
hmm.
uh, I think I've already said two things. A third thing is government policy is complex compared to the policy of running a firm, and it's very hard to get an easy grasp of what works the best.
But then you've got politicians winning who say that it's super easy and I can just pull something out of my ear and it's great. And you,
Yeah, I don't think that's an
yeah.
explanation that's going to work for long. Because what is it that they do?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I had again, yeah, so I'm not the only defense that I have, I think, is the following, which is I've already expressed to some degree, is that what other explanation do you have of politics that it's going to work? Now, I know you like to say that people are irrational, but irrational is not a prediction because you don't know where
Well,
they're going to be irrational.
well,
So
look,
it doesn't.
what I'll say is first, like the main point of talking about irrationality is just to open up your mind to the possibilities. And then, yeah, you've got to look at the facts. What I see is we have two bizarre political religions, which progressivism and Trumpism or whatever they are. They do have a lot of commonalities. So, like I say in my book, you've got a lot of anti-market stuff, a lot of anti-foreign stuff, this make work bias, just this absurd pessimism. The whole world's collapsing, even though it seems fine. And then these two religions, they to some degree solve their public good problem by unifying to go and support somebody. And then median voters for like is choosing between these two bizarre religions as to why a third party doesn't enter that has views that are actually moderate. It's like, well, it's really hard to get people excited enough about moderation to get a third party going, even if you were to get over the coordination problem and all of that.
Well, I just would hope that it would work in the not a third, but via a third party. I never was interested in third parties
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
about
Yeah,
their
but
own
I think your
problems.
book would predict that if both
But
parties insist on being
to
crazy,
change the
you would,
party.
yeah. Right. But I think your book would say if you did get two lunatic parties, then there would be entry and the third party would be reasonable, right?
What about there be entry into the one of the parties
Yeah, that's
and
another
try to
one.
change it?
Right.
That's been my
Depending upon like how much control those parties have. There are some parties where in the UK, those parties, they're private membership parties, and only like 1% of the population of the UK or
yeah.
something
I'm
like
talking
that
about the U.S. for
belongs.
now.
In the
Yeah.
US, we have this it's weird in the other way. The parties have no actual method of expelling people who are making them look bad. So
Yes.
so
So you could
that's weird in a
expect that
different way.
enough people might try to enter the party.
Yeah,
So
right.
uh, that's my answer to some degree. Is that
You say, something else that's quite notable to me is that there are a lot of people that don't belong to one party would just feel so dirty if they got into it. So we're flipping around. So like San Francisco, you might say, well, why don't you guys switch over to Republicans if San Francisco is getting run into the ground? And it's like I can't touch a Republican. They're like, oh, they're like so despicable. And so but these would be San Francisco Republicans. They'd be really moderate. It's like, but they're still part of this totally despicable organization. I can't possibly think about
I
it.
think San Francisco is getting more moderate, though.
General view as to how much of that is real versus just for show, um, of course, you can moderate a lot relative to San Francisco a few years ago and still be pretty crazy, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
but they are more moderate. I
Yes.
think they are more moderate, and that's my.
Mhm. Right.
I can't
Yeah.
explain everything, so
Yeah.
that's my thinking is, or I'm hoping that that somehow one of the parties will change.
Yeah. I mean, that seems like one of the least likely scenarios to me. It seems like the Trumpian takeover of the party is very strong. And on the other hand, the progressive takeover of the Democratic Party is also very strong nationally. You can see with Mandami winning in New York, it looks like, again, now you can always say, well, like there's this sleazebag Andrew Cuomo who is the other candidate, so that's why he's able to win. But even so, it seems like he's got a lot of passion, a lot of loyalty. It's very easy to see someone from the Democratic Socialist wing of the Democrats getting the nomination in 2028, isn't it?
No, I hope not.
Well,
So here
Don,
you're getting me, you're pushing me into being
come
a
on, Don.
partisan
Like,
rather than an
like,
intellectual
yeah.
person.
If we can't agree on anything else, we can agree that prediction and hope are different things.
But that's essentially, I think if I try to explain everything, I will explain nothing. So I'm going to stick with my
So
rather
your forecast
naive view.
is so what's the forecast? Both parties internally fix themselves for by 2028 or only
No,
one?
one of them does.
And it's going to be the Democrats?
It'll have to be the Democrats because they've been successful because they haven't. I don't think the Republicans have lost on their Trumpism under
Right.
Trumpism.
Like one pretty natural story to me is that Trump has some incredible charisma, which is very hard to replicate. And once he's out of the picture, then Republicans will be scrambling somehow to make people like them again. So that would be the Wittmanian story.
That's a reasonable argument, although I must admit I've tried very hard to understand his charisma and I believe that
Yeah.
people have it, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't buy a pencil from
Well,
him.
yeah. Welcome to my world, Don. Like the last president where I could even understand his appeal was Ronald Reagan. When I see his speeches, I'm like, I can see a person listening to him and not hating this person. All the other ones, I just like have a deep level
Well, you're
revulsion.
really far. Now, of course,
But I mean,
you're only a
I know I've
point.
got enough self awareness to know I'm weird. Definitely.
All right. Well, so the problem is that, of course, is that none of us ever agree with any president.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like just in terms of even the likability of the person, to me, Reagan was the only one that I can remember who, like, I just wouldn't walk out of a room to avoid because it just seemed like so sleazy and intellectually weak minded and power lusting. And I'm not a huge fan of Reagan, but still, I'll say at least I can see like being happy to have a meal with that guy, whereas the other ones, you're like, oh, terrible.
Well, I don't like him for other reasons, so it doesn't make any difference. Even
Yes.
the person I might be closest to, I obviously had disagreements. It's a very complicated thing. Nobody's going to like it,
Mm-hmm.
like lots of the decisions that any president makes. Although you're talking about personality,
Yeah. Again, just the
and I
pure
think
raw
that
charisma.
I noticed that a lot of women really, before they heard of all the bad things about uh,
Clinton.
Clinton,
Yeah.
they thought he was
Yeah.
they thought he was
Yeah. I, mean,
charismatic.
I think that most women have forgotten the bad stuff about Clinton and like him again. If they're at least they would if they saw a video of him. I mean, one of my favorite stories about charisma here is I think it was on the Daily Show in the late 1990s. They had some woman who had gone to jail for Clinton because she refused to testify, so she was held in contempt of court. And who the interviewer just said, "There's just a lot of people who don't like Bill Clinton. Do you have any insight on these people?" And my ears perk up because I'm like, okay, well, let's hear. And she says, "Yeah," she says, "There's a lot of people in high school who don't like the captain of the football team." And I'm like, "Yeah, of course, I hated that guy." She says, "Well, there's other people who don't like Bill Clinton for the same reason." I'm like, "Yeah, of course." So that to me was the simplest story. It's like, yeah, I don't like that kind of a person. I don't want someone who's just slapping backs and getting along with people. I want a steely-eyed rationalist, and anything else just I don't. They should be they should be nowhere near decision making or the wheels of power. That's my reaction. All right, and so do you take any consolation in the fact that actually, in terms of popular vote, the elections were quite close? Does that make you feel any better?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, feel better.
Yeah, but like intellectually, it's like my theory. Look,
Yeah,
if Trump had won with 90% of the vote,
I would have been
that
much
would be
more
a bigger
upset.
blow than if
Yes,
he's
I would have
winning
been
with
living in another country by that
yeah,
time.
yeah. So I mean the way that people are so quick to look at the electoral college and then claim this shows a landslide, it's like, do you understand what actually happened in terms of the numbers and how few votes you need to flip in order to change the outcome? 2024, like it was more votes would be needed. It was a bigger victory, but
Yes.
yeah. So like, how about just the model of leading politicians basically don't care much about the country and they're just power lusters. And if it's either my side wins for sure, but I don't get to be the leader, or my side wins with 40% probability and I get to be the leader, and I'm going to go with the second choice. What's wrong with that?
Well, the problem is your side and their side. I mean, how do you get to know the side? It's fascinating that he could change the term that Trump could change the terms so well of who's on his side.
Yeah, but so I'm thinking about like, why didn't Biden resign in 2023? Or just say like, I'm not going to run. And I think the simplest story is like, even if he was completely convinced, look, a Democrat will definitely win if I step down and allow a normal primary, or I can hang on to power like the Grim Reaper and I'll have a 40% chance of winning. And what's wrong with the story? He's a politician, and that 40% chance of winning mattered more to him than his party having victory.
Well, that's probably true.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Uh, uh, I'm super happy to get that concession, but on your model, shouldn't the party be designed to not allow people to drive drive the truck
I
like
don't
in
know.
a horrible snowstorm because they're getting because like it happens to be advantageous to them
I
to
didn't
take the chance?
understand. I'm absolutely on your page on this because I didn't understand
Mm-hmm.
why somebody didn't run against him.
Yeah.
Why there wasn't saying, oh, you're old. We got to get somebody new
Yeah.
in the party. We're not disrespecting you. I don't know why that didn't happen. It
I
was
mean,
it's
it's real rare. So the last notable time I think is 1980 when there was that anybody but Carter movement. ABC, remember it? Do you remember
Yeah,
ABC?
but Carter, there was a difference. This guy was old. Why would you want some old guy running the country? It's just as simple as that. I remember, by the way, that my father said that against Reagan. He didn't want somebody old. And
Yeah,
Reagan wasn't even anywhere
yeah.
near as
We've moved the
old.
goalposts of old quite a bit in the
What?
last. We moved the goalposts of old quite a bit in the last 40 years.
That's right.
Yeah, Reagan like 69 is when he got elected the first time. That's what we called old in those days.
That's right. So, we're talking at the level of, sort of political
Mhm.
interest rather than general theory. But yes, I
Yeah.
don't have an explanation for why nobody ran against
Yeah.
him.
Well, I mean, like, how about they figured they would lose anyway because he's got a big incumbent advantage. And by dividing the party at a crucial time, their name will be mud for the rest of their career. Wouldn't that
Well, I
be?
think that
Yeah.
might have been
Yeah.
it. That
You
might have
think
been
about
it.
how much a lot of Democrats still hate Ralph Nader for over 2000, right?
Well, well, yeah. Well, why wouldn't you be against Ralph Nader? I mean, that's another interesting thing. By the way, that's one of going to be was going to be one of my topics is why is it that so many people are anti-capitalist, anti-corporation? What what is it about the public?
So you're not going to say that if that's what they think, then they must be on average justified.
No.
Right. Yeah. So like I'm
But
not sure I have.
remember, I'm only interested in the median voter. So, but
Yeah.
there are
Yes.
a lot of
Mhm.
people, and a lot of them, and some of them are even otherwise somewhat intelligent,
Mhm.
who give me
Professors.
the following statements. Oh, or I'll hear from them, something about corporations are bad.
Mhm.
I don't trust corporations as opposed to trusting the mom and pop stores. I don't
Yep.
understand, or the other thing that using neoliberalism as a dirty word.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating to me and stupid.
Mhm. Right. And I think that I forgot to send you a draft of my new book that University of Chicago looks like they're going to be
Yeah,
publishing.
I heard about it, but
Yeah.
you never
Yeah.
sent me a
Yeah.
draft.
All
So
right.
I
So yeah, I
I
will send it to
am
you. But
definitely
yeah, like
here we'll have no probably have no arguments. It'll
all
be
right.
totally boring.
Yes. Well, my story is, markets do the good things that sound bad, governments do the bad things that sound good, and this
Well, I
is
don't
our
have that
dilemma.
part as much, but I do have
Yeah.
markets do well. I'm a
Yes. Yes.
very
Right.
heavily
They do well,
invested in that argument.
and they do well, and people take their business there generally when they got a choice. But there's something dirty about it all that rhetorically they don't like. And government on the other hand, like they're a lot of dissatisfaction with the performance, but there's something about it where it's just got this halo on it.
Well, this should be somewhat of a wake-up call. So I'll tell you one place where I have changed.
Okay.
Um, it seems to me that there are too many veto points in democratic politics in the US. In
Okay.
other words, the Congress can say no,
Mhm.
or even down to the low level of the cities. And so
Mhm.
the argument for a stronger president seems like a good one that I've had for quite a while.
Okay.
You have to have, and then we get Trump, and now I
Yep.
see the problems with that.
Yeah. I mean, really, what's been happening over, gradually, and then suddenly is executive orders were gradually getting more and more common, basically on the theory of, well, Congress can't get anything done, and then it's like, yeah, can I just write executive orders for everything that I want all the time, and
Yeah.
just rule by decree? As to whether the Supreme Court is going to crush that or not, betting markets say something like 70%, but it's like 30% for president can just do whatever tariffs he feels like all the time from now on.
Well, there is sort of something about it, but what I'm saying is that until Trump, I felt that you did need more presidential power in
Mhm.
order to get through all these various veto steps. There are too many people who can veto, too many locuses, and that makes it really hard to run a country when you have to get so many agreements. It's sort of like a transaction cost problem
Yep.
of getting everybody to agree to something when you have to have many people involved, because everybody's
Mhm.
going to be saying, "Well, I want what can get out of it." It's
I mean,
it's
I
not
hate
a
to keep
very
waving
good
this
way to
book
run.
around, on, but if I were you, I would have, during this whole period, have said people are complaining about we need more presidential power. We are the richest country of the population, over 10 million, with over 10 million people on Earth. We have been going strong for 200 years. We haven't had a civil war for 150 years. Like, what are people complaining about? This is a fantastic system. And I'm like, my story, if I were you, would just be that the people who are complaining are those who want to go and upend a highly functional system.
Well, I wasn't talking about a dramatic change like that, but there can be marginal changes, don't you think? That's all I
There
was
could be,
thinking of.
but like honestly, if I had been you in 2012, I think my reaction would be: some people think the president should have more power, some people should have less. I think the system has got it just about right.
Well, as I said, you do a better job of defending
Right.
my position than anybody, including me.
All
How,
right.
what
So
can
yeah,
I?
so we've been talking about your stuff for a while. You said that you want to grow and grill me a bit, Don. So I
Yeah,
couldn't
I
be
don't want to
happier
drill
to
you
give you
so
the
much, but let
chance.
me just say the first thing I have not read a lot of your stuff carefully, but I know you've talked about a lot of things, and one is you're pro-immigration, and
Hmm.
I'm not sure that you have the following pro-immigration argument.
Hmm.
Let's think about Mexico versus the United States.
Hmm.
The United States has a high capital labor
Hmm.
ratio,
Right.
and Mexico has a low capital
Hmm.
labor.
Lower. Sure.
Yeah, low compared to the United
Yeah. Yeah.
States. So the natural thing is for labor to immigrate to the United States.
Hmm.
If you try to prevent labor from immigrating to the United States, then capital will naturally move to Mexico. So
Hmm.
it's not just labor that you want to talk about. Maybe you've already said this in your
Hmm.
own work, because I said I haven't read it, that if you don't allow more immigrants, you'll have an outflow of capital.
Hmm.
It's not clear to me that that's what people realize when they're trying to prevent immigration.
Yeah. I mean, I would say this is one where if you know some first year PhD macro models, then your argument makes perfect sense. But if you know a bit more, then not so much. So remember, Robert Lucas had this great line. He said, capital flows from where it is scarce to where it is plentiful. Capital flows from where it is scarce to where it is
Yeah,
plentiful. And that's totally true. There's almost no multinational investment in sub Saharan Africa, for example.
that's right. Yes.
Right. And I think this fits a story of those countries are just so screwed up that they just have, it's not just that they have a high labor capital ratio, they got really low multi-factor productivity
They have
for,
a lot of,
yeah,
and it's unstable.
yeah, for a long, I mean, well, or the stably bad is kind of the way I like to think about it. You can count on it being
Yes,
terrible,
yes.
right? But basically, they have terrible policies as well as
Well, I'm talking
like
about
propensity for
Mexico, which is
violence and
not
everything else.
I'm talking about Mexico, though.
Yeah, Mexico, it's got very bad crime, and yeah, I think their policies are far from the worst in the world, but not great.
We've moved some of our production to Mexico.
Yeah, so it's tempting, but then there's the issue of then we will be under the thumb of corrupt Mexican bureaucrats, like terrible Mexican regulation. We'll have to deal with Mexican labor unions, and by virtue of being foreigners, you'll have Target painted on your back, and you won't have the political connections
That's
to
true.
silence your enemies.
But on the other hand, under all those things that you've said, we've moved some production to Mexico.
Well, not if things are terrible for capital in Mexico. I mean, just imagine, look, this is not how things are in Mexico. Imagine Mexico's policy was we expropriate all foreign capital the second it shows up.
Yeah,
Then there would not be investment in Mexico.
that's right. But there is investment in
Yes,
Mexico.
right. But just nowhere close to what it would take to equalize wages.
No, I'm not saying
Yeah, yeah,
equalize. I'm just
yeah,
saying movement
yeah.
towards.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll say, look, there's been a moderate amount, but again, Mexico is just so dysfunctional that it's only a modest step in the right direction. So yeah, things are
So
better than
that's
they
why I'm
otherwise would be
arguing.
because
I
of
didn't argue
capital
the
mobility.
perfect
Yeah,
factor
yeah,
equalization. All I'm
yeah. I mean,
saying,
maybe it's moved like 25% of the direction towards factory equalization. I mean, of course, there's a lot of people who would like to prevent foreign investment too, right? All the complaining about offshoring and everything else.
I don't understand some of that either.
Yeah, well, it could be that psychologically normal human beings disagree with Econ One very strongly,
Well, that's right.
even though they can't even explain the arguments. But it's like, no, no, no.
Well, that's another thing I was going to say today, but maybe I don't have to. Is that well, one, it's good because it wouldn't. I'm employed as an economist because people don't understand economics. If people understood all these economic issues, I wouldn't have a job I wouldn't be teaching about them.
That doesn't sound like Calder Hicks to me, Don. That sounds like we could have like Whitman 2.0, which is whatever's good for Whitman is good for the world, but I don't think you're gonna go that far.
No, no, but I'm being funny, or
Yep,
I'm trying to
yep,
be funny, I would
yep.
say, not.
Do you have children and grandchildren, Don?
I have between my wife and I, we have 9 grandchildren.
Oh wow, fantastic. So you can't just cavalierly say I don't care about the future. Après moi les
It
deluge.
was just a joke.
Mean, I will say that if I didn't have any kids, by this point I might have just said humanity's broken. I'm just going to do my own thing, and they can reap the consequences of their folly. But having kids, it does tie you to the world in some way, where it's like I can't just say I don't care about what happens in the future because my kids will be living there, my grandkids will be living there. I'm very impressed with your fertility, by the way, Don. So 9 grandkids.
Yes.
It's way above replacement. Nice. For PhDs, very rare.
Well, remember we have two, they're two separate, they're not, this is a mixed marriage, a
Sure,
blended
sure,
marriage. So
sure. So then you got to divide it among more
we
people.
each had 3 children with
And then
somebody
you got nine
else.
children between them. All right. So
And
let's
they
see,
don't have
four and a
that,
half.
and they
Yeah,
don't
four,
have
yeah,
as
four and a
many.
half still above replacement
In
for
fact, it's probably
grandkids.
more.
Yep.
Now that I think of it. So there's
Uh,
6 children, one didn't have, so there's 5. Yeah, 9. Yeah, that's right.
all right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I too hope to have more grandchildren than I can count, and where I'm sitting there saying, "Wait, how many have I got again?" Right. All right. So, what else have you got that you want to ask me,
Um,
Don?
let's see. I had it sort of written down. So if you don't mind me, give me 1 second. I'm gonna.
Not at all.
Uh, well, let's talk about rationality. I brought this up before, and
Mm-hmm.
you seem to like a lot of psychology and putting
Mm-hmm.
it into your
Yep.
uh, sort of understanding of the world. I'm not a great lover of psychology, and the reason why is because there's so many explanations for rationality.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's so surprising that psychology as profession has focused on being on the irrationalities rather than on the rationalities. Now, so you could say that the good way to understand rational behavior is to see where people are
Mm-hmm.
irrational.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I'm not talking about the psychiatrist, I'm talking about
Sure.
general psychology. So you have all these failures that I'm sure you can list
Mm-hmm.
better than I can, and they're all over the map. And it's not clear which people have these errors and which direction they go in terms of voting. So you could say Donald has some kind of a problem here, but how does it explain voting behavior?
And honestly, I say you got to get really empirical. You've got to say, like, well, what does the people in the society care about? And just understanding a party system. That is a lot of where I would start. So, like in this society, people are into being Democrats, Republicans. I mean, it's very much like with religion. So, like, I'm totally on board. Religion is irrational, and these doctrines are generally just nonsense. But that by itself doesn't tell you what people are going to believe. You need to go and study the different religions. Say, all right, so there's this thing called Christianity, and this guy Jesus, and he was a Jew, and then there's this whole Abrahamic tradition. So, like, it's one where it's not as tidy as you would like, but I don't think that it's that hard either. You just have to be willing to actually do some reading and listen to people and find out what's going on. And
But I don't
that's a lot
know.
of what I try
I
to do
have
in
a
Myth the
hard
Rational
time
Voter is
understanding
just organize what are the kinds of the big cluster mistakes that people are making.
how do uh, how do Republicans become pro tariffs?
Yeah,
You're
well,
an
so that's a
anti-tariff.
good question, actually. So here's the thing. I've been looking at data going back at least since the 90s, probably before. Rank and file Republicans were actually always kind of a leaning protectionist. This was a case where there was a elite base gap for a long time.
Yes.
And finally, Trump went and broke that and changed what the party's position is. even there, like you're saying, it's not completely clear that he has permanently changed the party versus just changing what people feel like they need to say for the time being.
So, and then of course, you brought up something that my basically my wife has brought up. How do you, if you believe in Christianity, how do you behave? How do you want to treat immigrants so poorly?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you can figure out a way, but so how do you know? It seems like you're going to just be telling stories
Right.
after
I
a
mean, obviously,
while.
so there's that great story, The Good Samaritan, that I put into my open borders. And just to refresh people's memories, the point of The Good Samaritan is that all human beings are brothers and sisters. That's the point. You might think of that as a central message of Christianity, but that is not the way that most Christians have historically interpreted it. And instead, for a lot of Christians, it's very ritualistic. What is Christianity? It's going to church and it's reciting this ritual. And to say, like, but you didn't live as a Christian, it's that's you're violating the rules here by actually comparing my behavior to the Sermon on the Mount. Obviously, theologians have a whole bunch of stories about what things like the Sermon on the Mount actually mean. So, for example, the Catholic Church doctrine is these are counsels of perfection, and normal people are not expected to actually turn the other cheek if they get punched. Okay, all right. It's kind of a weird epicycle to add on, but the overall story, though, is indeed puzzling to me if you took it doctrinally. I think, like, I mean, one of the main things that I've learned, and this is probably partly why I fell away from religion at such a young age, is they would say some words, and I would say, okay, so you've said those words, and now everything must be made consistent with that, or else it's wrong, or else it's wrong, or you're wrong. So what is it? Normal people do not like that at all, and they treat you like you're the idiot for saying that if you say that all human beings are brothers and sisters, then you have to start giving away your money to the poor. It's like, no, no, I can say one thing, do a different thing, and you are the fool for going and expecting consistency. To me, that's just rationalism, and there's nothing that they can really say other than I'm gonna live at the level of an animal. But what can you do? They're happy with that. They're
I
content
don't know.
anyway.
It seems like it's very complicated. I don't. I think that I used to tell people I have a simple mind. I used to tell my graduate students that you have to start with a simple model, a theory model. Don't make it too complex right away
Mm-hmm.
because you got to understand the mechanics of it. But it seems like maybe that economists in general, or maybe me, or maybe it refers to me in particular, I'm rather good at simple models and following the rules. Once you
Mm-hmm.
start entering all these other possibilities, I don't, there's too many issues. We might as well be in the humanities.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my problem is I don't think economists are particularly skilled in that manner, in that. Maybe you are, but it seems it's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to make sense out of conflicting theories that aren't fully developed. Almost all the
Yeah.
models, the thing that always struck me about most of these models and most of the thinking in many of these other social sciences is the models are very limited. They don't explore the possibility. Well, what if that's true? What does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
And what does it explain? And what does it not explain? What things does it explain that aren't true? And that doesn't happen in most of these
Mm-hmm.
models. So I've had this kind of argument with other people in psychology. And and so that's why we're eating. So I don't have a. So you're going to give me a very long explanation of that involves, seven kinds of subtleties about what you've discovered about people, and maybe that's the right way to go. But I don't think I have the capacity to know which things you claim are true and where people draw the line where they don't and what they do. Uh, it's way beyond my comprehension, I should say, maybe.
Hmm. I actually believe in you, Don. I think that if you applied yourself, you make a lot of progress. I think there is a reluctance to start applying yourself. First of all, of course, it does detach you from a lot of the mainstream economics profession. And then secondly, it does mean that you got to say, well, maybe some of my earlier work was just way off. As you know, on the one hand, I think that this book is deeply wrong, but on the other hand, incredibly enlightening. I mean, like, I don't think I could have gotten to where I am without this book, Don, and I'm so grateful for it.
So
So, standing
let
on the
me,
shoulders of giants is like one way that you can describe it.
thank you. So let me try something here. I'm, as I said, I haven't read your material carefully, so I've given you one where I was positive about the role of immigration on, but you didn't seem to accept it, that reducing immigration may also increase
Yeah, no,
capitalist
no. I mean, I think it
behavior
totally does.
also.
I think it's just a very small effect.
Well, it is. Well,
Yeah.
that's right, but
Yeah.
it's misread.
In fact, I'm not even sure about that because I think that with more immigration, that would establish more business connections between countries internationally,
Good.
which might then actually lead to more investment happening
All right,
caused
I
by
try to help.
immigration. Yeah.
All right, I try to
Yeah.
help you in your
Yeah.
argument,
Yeah.
but
So
I
maybe, yeah.
so
So
let me
actually, maybe
try.
that's totally wrong now that I think about it.
Let me try to help you,
Yeah.
or let me now attack you. But
All
again,
right.
I haven't read your stuff carefully. I'm not a. Your argument against education relies very heavily on the sheepskin effect. And
That's, I mean, it's one important piece of evidence. It's not I wouldn't put it at number one, but maybe number five.
oh, I'm sorry. Well, then I totally misunderstood
Yeah.
because I thought it was very important. And to me, the sheep's. I'm not clear that the sheepskin effect is really there because, and maybe you've discussed this, but in my thinking, I would expect that the people who go to, let's say, go to college for 4 years and don't get their degree, there's something different
Mm-hmm.
about those people than people who go to college for
Mm-hmm.
4 years and then get their degree. And they could be from families that are of low income and can't afford it to graduate. They could have a a physical or mental problem that prevents them from doing it, and they also may not just have the
Brains.
energy to pursue these kinds of activities, and those might also be
Mm-hmm.
relevant to people who are in their job as well.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised that there would be a difference.
So first of all, like in the data, the sheepskin effect is huge. We're not talking about some marginal effect. So it's something where if it's selection, there's got to be some incredibly powerful selection that's making it happen.
Yes.
Right now, second point, while there can be selection on unobservables, the usual thing economists do is we start with selection on observables. So we start with let's do a bunch of controls and see whether that actually changes the result. And the answer actually is that all the things that we normally control to see as possible confounds for the education premium, they just don't work. So like the ratio of the annual return to the diploma return or the annual premium to the diploma premium is almost exactly the same after controlling for intelligence, which is very well known in the data to be the main confound. So it's like if none of the measured things actually controlling for them, if that doesn't make the sheepskin effect go away, then it really
Well,
does seem to be a total
I
Hail
didn't talk,
Mary
do you
pass to
notice
think.
I didn't talk about intelligence as
Mm-hmm.
my examples?
Yep.
I talked about and
Yeah,
family
yeah. So here's the thing: is we have very strong proof that intelligence is a confound here. It is in fact the one very strongly demonstrated confound, and that just doesn't work at all.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then it's like, okay, we have some other confounds where the measures aren't as good, but again, those don't seem to work. So I mean, there is a point I would say where like prove that there isn't some totally previously unmeasured, undiscussed confound that explains everything, and it's like, okay, I guess there could be. And then
Okay,
the other
so I
point that
have
I
to
made
defer
is
to
that it
you.
seems like the sheepskin is very specific to whatever the graduation year is in a system. It doesn't make sense that the selection would matter enormously for year 3 in the UK and for year 4 in the US just because we have 4-year degrees and they have 3-year degrees.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you here again because I don't know the literature. And you're suggesting that the literature has taken care of it.
Yeah,
But
well, in a funny way, namely in the 70s, back before we had any good data on diploma effects, the general view was that if we found big diploma effects, then signaling would get a big boost. And if we didn't, it would get a loss. But after the data came in and sheepskin effects were confirmed to be enormous, then the majority that never liked the signaling model just said, oh, well, it doesn't prove anything. And then we moved on. So
Okay, well, that's
in my view, a fairly
again, I can't
disgraceful
debate you
response.
because I don't know the knowledge. It just occurred to me that if you come from a wealthy family, unless you're Bill Gates, most people, the people who don't finish college, sometimes don't finish college
Yeah. So
because
you
they're
mean basically there is a whole literature on how much subsidies go and raise college enrollment and graduation, and no one finds anything more than a tiny marginal effect.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's
So yeah, again, which means it could be some tiny share,
yeah, no, no,
but
no.
it's
I'm
not going
not
to
gonna,
explain this
as I said,
huge sheepskin
you
that we
got
think
the
about.
good, you have a good answer.
All right. Okay. So we're about out of time, Don. Like, I just want to say, like, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. I know that the facts are pretty awkward, so I can see that you might just want to not talk about it, but I appreciate that we could just go and have this fun, candid conversation about what's happened to the United States. And obviously, we could have expanded it to all of global democracy, which has plenty of other complaints too, but maybe another time.
It's not it hasn't been a happy period both personally for the regarding politics and intellectually
Hmm.
and I'm not gonna try to bend my
All right.
thinking too
Hmm.
much.
I mean, funny you say that. For me, intellectually, I feel like it's been a great time. And personally, it has reinforced my commitment to not care much about what is happening to the world and just try to make my own corner of the world beautiful. What else can I do? And should I waste these very precious years of my life being upset because some fool wins two elections? I refuse.
Very good attitude.
Yeah, like look, I it's sometimes it's hard to keep a good attitude, but if you don't try, I don't see any hope at all. You got to try to have a good attitude in life, or else what would life be?
You're wasting it.
Yeah. All right, buddy. All right, fantastic talking to you,
Thank you.
and hope we can talk again.
Okay, good. And I
Bye bye.
enjoyed talking to you as usual. You've thought things through quite a bit, and I'm very impressed.
All right, thanks a lot, Don. All right.
Take care.
All right.